I should have known the moment I saw my sister's face at Dad's funeral that she was already planning to destroy me. The rain hammered against the windows of Morrison's funeral home that Tuesday afternoon, each drop like a tiny fist demanding entry. I stood beside the mahogany casket, watching water streak down the glass, distorting the view of the parking lot beyond. Our father lay there in his best navy suit, the one he'd worn to my college graduation 15 years ago, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to tell me something through those permanently closed eyes. "Beautiful service," Mrs. Henderson from next door whispered as she squeezed my hand. "Your daddy would be proud." I nodded, forcing a smile while scanning the room for Elena. My younger sister had vanished after the eulogy, leaving me to accept condolences alone. Typical Elena behavior, present for the spotlight, absent for the cleanup. At 32, I'd grown accustomed to being the responsible one, the daughter who stayed close to home, who checked on Dad every Sunday, who noticed when his breathing got labored and convinced him to see the cardiologist. Elena, at 28, had built her life 3 states away in Chicago, visiting maybe twice a year with expensive gifts and elaborate stories about her marketing job. She was the golden child, the one with Dad's bright green eyes and easy charm, while I inherited Mom's practical brown hair and stubborn chin. Even at the funeral, mourners kept commenting on how radiant Elena looked, how success suited her. I found her in the funeral home's small kitchen, leaning against the counter with her phone pressed to her ear. She was still wearing the black Armani dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her blonde highlights catching the fluorescent light. "No, Marcus, I can't just fly back tomorrow," she was saying, her voice carrying that slight whine she'd perfected as a teenager. "There are arrangements to make. The house, the lawyer." She noticed me and quickly lowered her voice. "I'll call you back. Everything okay?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why I bothered. Elena's problems were always urgent and dramatic, usually involving some crisis with her high-powered boyfriend or her demanding boss. "Just work stuff." She slipped the phone into her designer purse. "God, I can't believe he's really gone. It doesn't feel real, you know." I wanted to remind her that she'd seen Dad exactly 3 times in the past 2 years, that she'd missed his birthday last month because of a crucial client dinner. Instead, I said, "The lawyer wants to meet with us Thursday morning. For the will reading." Elena's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her purse strap. "Of course. I mean, it's probably just standard stuff, right? The house to you, since you've been taking care of everything." There was something in her tone, a careful casualness that made my skin prickle. I'd heard that tone before, usually right before Elena announced she'd borrowed my car without asking or used my credit card for an emergency. "I don't know what Dad decided," I said carefully. "We'll find out Thursday." "Right." She smiled, but it didn't reach those green eyes. "Well, I should probably head back to the hotel. It's been such a long day." I watched her leave, her heels clicking against the funeral home's marble floor with military precision. Through the window, I saw her slide into a rental BMW, black, sleek, expensive. Very Elena. The next day, I spent cleaning out Dad's closet, something I'd been dreading for weeks. His cologne still clung to his shirts, that familiar mix of Old Spice and motor oil from his decades working at the Ford plant. I was folding his favorite flannel when I found the envelope tucked into the breast pocket. My name was written across the front in Dad's careful handwriting, the letters slightly shaky from his recent illness. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper and a small brass key. "Sarah," the letter began. Asterisk, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably cleaning out my things like the good daughter you've always been. I need you to know some things about your sister. Check the lockbox in my bedroom closet, behind the old photo albums. The key will open it. What you find might hurt, but you deserve the truth. I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to tell you while I was alive. Trust your instincts. Love, Dad, asterisk. My hands were trembling as I climbed the stairs to Dad's bedroom. The closet smelled of mothballs and memories. I pushed aside winter coats and cardboard boxes until I found the small metal lockbox hidden behind a stack of photo albums filled with our childhood pictures. The key fit perfectly. Inside were bank statements, printed emails, and photocopied checks, all with Elena's name. My eyes scanned the papers, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. $15,000 transferred from Dad's savings account 6 months ago. Another $12,000 3 months before that. Email after email from Elena, each more desperate than the last. Dad, I know you're disappointed, but I can explain everything. The company is restructuring and I need to cover some expenses until my severance comes through. Please don't tell Sarah. She wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under. This is temporary, I promise. I'll pay you back as soon as I get the promotion. Marcus and I are looking at buying a place, and I need to show the bank I have assets. The final email was dated just 2 weeks before Dad's heart attack. I know you said no more loans, but I'm desperate. If I don't have this money by Friday, everything falls apart. You're my father. Doesn't that mean something? Dad's response was short and final. Elena, I've given you everything I can. The well is dry. You need to face whatever trouble you're in and stop running from it. I won't enable this anymore. I sat on Dad's bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of my sister's betrayal, and felt something cold settle in my chest. All those years I'd worried about Dad's finances, suggesting he move to a smaller place or accept help with his medical bills. All those times he'd waved off my concerns, saying he was fine and managing okay. He'd been bleeding money to Elena while I clipped coupons and drove my 15-year-old Honda to save on expenses so I could help him if needed. The worst part was knowing he'd died protecting her secret. Even in his final weeks, when I'd begged him to let me help organize his finances, he'd refused. He'd carried this burden alone rather than expose Elena's lies. I spent the rest of the evening researching. Elena's LinkedIn profile painted the picture of a successful marketing executive at a prestigious Chicago firm. But a simple Google search revealed the truth: the company had filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago. Elena had been unemployed for almost a year, living off Dad's money and whatever she could get from the mysterious Marcus. When Thursday morning arrived, I sat in the lawyer's office with photocopies of Dad's secret documents hidden in my purse. Elena arrived 10 minutes late, breathless and apologetic, clutching a large coffee and checking her phone constantly. Sorry, she gasped, sliding into the chair beside me. Conference call ran long. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. It was a lie, like everything else about her life. Mr. Patterson, Dad's lawyer for over 20 years, cleared his throat and opened the file. Ladies, your father's will is fairly straightforward. He's left his personal effects to be divided between you both, and his life insurance policy, $50,000, goes to Sarah. Elena nodded, still scrolling through her phone. She wasn't paying attention yet. However, Mr. Patterson continued, there's the matter of the house and remaining assets. Now Elena looked up. Due to some recent financial obligations, your father's estate is somewhat complicated. The house has a reverse mortgage that leaves very little equity. His savings account, unfortunately, has been depleted. After funeral expenses and outstanding debts, there's approximately $8,000 remaining, which he's asked to be split equally between you. Elena's face went white. That can't be right. Dad was careful with money. He had savings, investments. I'm afraid not, Miss Morrison. Your father's financial records show several large withdrawals over the past year. Personal loans, it appears. Elena's eyes darted to me, and I saw the moment she realized I might know. The mask of grief slipped, revealing something calculating and desperate underneath. Well, she said carefully, I guess that's that. 4,000 each. It's not much, but... She attempted a sad smile. At least we have our memories. I waited until we were outside the lawyer's office before I spoke. Memories, I repeated. Is that what we're calling lies now? Elena stopped walking. We were standing in the parking lot, the autumn wind whipping dead leaves around our feet. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out the photocopied bank statements. It means I know where Dad's money went. All of it. For a moment, Elena looked like she might deny it. Then something shifted in her expression, and I saw the sister I'd grown up with disappear completely. What remained was a stranger wearing Elena's face. You don't understand, she said, her voice flat. You've never understood the pressure I'm under. Living in Chicago, maintaining appearances, networking, it costs money. Whose money, Elena? You've been unemployed for 8 months. How did you? She caught herself. Look, I was going to pay him back. I had plans, opportunities. He died worrying about money. The words exploded out of me, months of grief and frustration finding a target. He died thinking he was a burden, that he couldn't provide for us, while you were bleeding him dry for your fake lifestyle. It wasn't fake. Elena's composure cracked. I worked hard for that life. I deserved. You deserved nothing. I was shaking now, rage coursing through me like electricity. You took everything from a sick old man and then showed up here in your designer clothes, playing the grieving daughter. You're disgusting. Elena's green eyes hardened. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous that I got out of this nowhere town while you stayed here playing nursemaid. Don't blame me because your life is pathetic. The words hit like a physical blow, but they also crystallized something inside me. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone I didn't want to know. You're right, I said quietly. I did stay. I stayed and took care of our father while you took advantage of him. I stayed and made sure he wasn't alone, that someone cared whether he ate dinner or took his medication. I stayed because that's what family does. Spare me the martyrdom, Sarah. You stayed because you were too scared to leave. Too scared to take risks, to want something more than this. She gestured at the small-town lawyer's office, the modest downtown buildings, the ordinary life I'd built. Maybe. But at least I didn't steal from the man who raised me. Elena flinched, then recovered. I borrowed money from my father. That's not stealing. With no intention of paying it back. While he struggled. While he worried. I stepped closer. While he protected your secret even when it was killing him. For a split second, I saw something that might have been shame flicker across Elena's face. Then it was gone. What do you want, Sarah? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry Dad's gone. I'm sorry the money's gone. I'm sorry your boring little life feels even more meaningless now. There. Happy? I stared at her, this stranger with my sister's face, and felt something settle inside me like ice forming over still water. No. But I will be. That evening, I sat in Dad's kitchen with my laptop and a cup of his favorite coffee, black with too much sugar. Elena's rental car was parked at the Comfort Inn on Route 9, and according to her Facebook check-in, she was planning to fly back to Chicago the next morning. Back to whatever life she was pretending to live with money she'd stolen from our dying father. I started with her social media accounts. Elena had always been careless with privacy settings, more concerned with projecting success than protecting information. Her Instagram was a carefully curated gallery of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and professional achievements. The comments were full of friends and colleagues praising her success, her style, her enviable life. I began drafting posts of my own. Not on her accounts, that would be too obvious. Instead, I created anonymous profiles and started commenting on her photos. Innocent questions at first. Wasn't your company one of the ones that filed bankruptcy last year? On a photo of her at a work event. My friend said this restaurant closed 6 months ago, under a picture supposedly taken last week. Then I moved to LinkedIn. Elena's professional network was built on the foundation of lies about her current employment. I started small, sending connection requests from fake profiles representing employees at her supposedly current company. When people accepted and began asking about Elena, claiming they'd never heard of her, the questions multiplied. By midnight, I had 23 browser tabs open and a comprehensive plan. Elena had built her life on deception, using our father's money to maintain an illusion that was already crumbling. All I had to do was apply the right pressure in the right places, and her house of cards would collapse. The beautiful thing about lies is that they require constant maintenance. Truth, on the other hand, has a way of taking care of itself. I started with Marcus. Elena's boyfriend existed, that much was real. A quick search revealed he was a successful architect in Chicago, recently featured in a design magazine for his work on luxury condominiums. His Instagram showed a man who clearly enjoyed the finer things in life: expensive wine, exotic vacations, designer watches. It took less than an hour to find his work email. The message I sent was simple and devastating. Mr. Chen, you don't know me, but I believe you're dating my sister Elena Morrison. I felt you should know that Elena has been unemployed for 8 months and has been fraudulently claiming to work for a company that filed bankruptcy. She recently stole over $30,000 from our recently deceased father to maintain her lifestyle. I thought you deserved to know the truth about the woman you're dating. I have documentation if you'd like to see it. I attached copies of the bank statements and Elena's desperate emails to Dad. By the time Elena's phone started buzzing at 6 a.m., I was already awake, sitting at Dad's kitchen table with another cup of coffee and my laptop. Her ringtone, some annoying pop song, went off 12 times in 15 minutes. Then came the text messages. I couldn't see them, of course, but I could imagine. Marcus confronting her about the lies. Elena scrambling to explain, to justify, to manipulate. The desperate phone calls to friends who might lend money, to former colleagues who might provide job references for positions that didn't exist. But I wasn't finished. Elena's credit was built on fraudulent job verification. A few anonymous tips to credit agencies about her employment status would trigger reviews of her accounts. Her luxury apartment lease required proof of income she didn't have. Her car lease, her credit cards, her gym membership, her entire carefully constructed Chicago life depended on the illusion that she was a successful marketing executive. I was methodically dismantling that illusion, one truth at a time. The hotel called me at 10 a.m. Elena had apparently caused some kind of disturbance, screaming at someone on the phone in the lobby until other guests complained. She'd checked out abruptly, leaving her room a mess and her rental car in the parking lot with the keys on the front desk. I drove to the hotel and found the BMW still running, Elena's designer luggage scattered across the back seat like she'd thrown everything in randomly. The desk clerk, a young man with sympathetic eyes, handed me the keys with obvious relief. Your sister seemed upset, he said diplomatically. She said she had a family emergency and needed to get to the airport immediately. Asked us to call you about the car. Elena had fled. Run back to Chicago to try to salvage whatever remained of her crumbling life. But I wasn't going to let her disappear that easily. The next phase required patience. Elena's former employer had filed bankruptcy, but her former colleagues were still around, scattered across the Chicago marketing scene. I spent the weekend creating detailed profiles of Elena's deception, documenting her lies about employment, her theft from our father, her fraudulent lifestyle. Then I began reaching out to her professional network. The conversations were always the same. I thought you should know what kind of person Elena Morrison really is. Documentation attached. Evidence provided. Truth served cold and methodically. By Monday morning, Elena's LinkedIn profile had been flagged for false information. By Tuesday, 3 of her former colleagues had posted warnings about her on professional networking sites. By Wednesday, her story was being discussed in Chicago marketing groups as a cautionary tale about professional integrity. Elena called me Thursday night, sobbing hysterically. "How could you do this to me?" she gasped between tears. "I'm your sister." "So was I said calmly, "when you were stealing from Dad. I lost everything. Marcus broke up with me, my landlord is evicting me, I can't get a job anywhere in Chicago. People are calling me a fraud, a thief. Because you are. Sarah, please. I'm begging you. Stop this. I'll disappear, I'll move away, I'll never bother you again. Just please stop destroying my life." I sat in Dad's old recliner, the chair where he'd spent his final months worrying about money while Elena bled him dry, and felt something cold and satisfied settle in my chest. "You destroyed your own life, Elena. I just made sure people knew the truth about it." "The truth?" Elena's voice cracked. "The truth is that you're a bitter, jealous woman who never had the courage to build anything worth having. So you're tearing down what I built instead. What you built was made of lies and our father's money. And what you built." Elena laughed, but it sounded more like choking. "What exactly have you accomplished, Sarah? You're 32 years old, single, working a dead-end job in a dead-end town, living in our dead father's house. At least I tried to be something more." "I was something more," I said quietly. "I was a daughter who cared more about her father than her bank account." Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, defeated. "I can't come home," she whispered. "Even if I wanted to. I don't have money for rent, for food, for anything. I pawned my jewelry, I sold everything I could sell. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch and she wants me gone by Sunday." For just a moment, I felt something that might have been pity. Then I remembered Dad's final months, the way he'd hidden his financial stress, the way he'd died protecting Elena's secrets. "You made your choice," I said. "Live with it." I hung up. The next few weeks passed quietly. I returned Elena's rental car and paid the fees from the remaining money in Dad's estate, money that should have been hers but felt more like restitution. I cleaned out the rest of his belongings, donated his clothes to the church, put the house on the market. Elena's social media accounts went dark. The carefully curated Instagram posts stopped, the LinkedIn profile was eventually deleted. Friends who tried to contact her got no response. She had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed, leaving behind only the wreckage of her lies and the people who'd been hurt by them. I thought I'd feel more satisfied. For months, I'd been driven by a cold fury that demanded justice, that required Elena to face consequences for what she'd done to Dad. But as autumn turned to winter and the house sold to a young family with 2 small children, I felt empty rather than victorious. The realization came to me on a Tuesday morning in December, as I was packing the last of my belongings to move into a smaller apartment across town. I'd been cleaning out Dad's desk when I found another envelope with my name on it, this one hidden in the back of his file drawer. "Sarah," the letter began, ** if you found the other letter and the lockbox, then you know about Elena's problems. I hope you'll forgive an old man for asking one more favor. Whatever you decide to do with what you've learned, remember that she's still your sister. People make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones, but that doesn't mean they can't change. I'm not asking you to forget or forgive what she's done to me. I'm asking you not to let her mistakes turn you into someone you don't want to be. You've always been the stronger one, Sarah. Be strong enough to be merciful too. Love, Dad, **. I sat on the floor of his empty office, holding the letter with shaking hands, and realized what I'd done. In my quest for justice, I'd become something else entirely. I'd systematically destroyed Elena's life, used her own weaknesses and lies against her with surgical precision. I'd been thorough, relentless, and completely without mercy. I'd won. So why did I feel like I'd lost everything that mattered? I tried calling Elena's phone, but the number was disconnected. Her email bounced back as undeliverable. The friend whose couch she'd been crashing on wouldn't return my calls. Elena had vanished completely, and I had no way of knowing if she was safe, if she was getting help, if she was even alive. The weight of what I'd done settled on me like a stone. I'd set out to make Elena face the consequences of stealing from Dad, but I'd also stolen something from her, the possibility of redemption, of learning from her mistakes and becoming better. I'd been so focused on justice that I'd forgotten about mercy. So focused on punishment that I'd ignored the possibility of healing. Dad's funeral had been almost 6 months ago, but I was finally ready to grieve. Not just for him, but for Elena, for the sister I'd lost to lies and desperation. For the family we'd been before money and secrets and pride had poisoned everything between us. For the woman I'd become in my quest for revenge, someone Dad wouldn't have recognized, someone I didn't want to be. I kept the last letter on my kitchen table for weeks, reading it whenever the guilt became too heavy to carry alone. Dad had seen this moment coming, had known that I would discover Elena's betrayal and be tempted by the power to hurt her back. He'd tried to give me a different path, one that led toward healing instead of destruction. I'd chosen revenge instead, and now I had to live with that choice. Spring came early that year. I was working in my small garden behind the apartment when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. I looked up to see a figure walking slowly toward me, thin, tired, wearing clothes that had seen better days. It took me a moment to recognize my sister. Elena looked like she'd aged 5 years in the 6 months since Dad's funeral. Her hair was darker, pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes, no expensive accessories. She looked like the girl I'd grown up with, before ambition and desperation had transformed her into someone I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sarah," she said quietly. I stood up, brushing dirt from my gardening gloves. "Elena. I didn't think I'd see you again. I wasn't sure you would." She stayed near the gate, like she was ready to run if I told her to leave. "I've been in rehab. Not for drugs or alcohol, but for other things. Compulsive lying, financial addiction, destructive behavior. They have programs for people like me now. Are you okay?" Elena laughed, but it was different from the bitter sound I'd heard on the phone months ago. "I don't know. I'm trying to be. I got a job at a nonprofit in Denver. It doesn't pay much, but it's real work. Honest work. I'm living in a studio apartment with furniture from Goodwill, and it's the first place I've ever lived that actually feels like home." We stood in silence for a moment, the spring breeze carrying the scent of new grass and blooming trees. "I came to apologize," Elena said. "Not just for taking Dad's money, but for everything. For lying, for using people, for being the kind of person who would steal from her own dying father. And I came to apologize for what I said to you that day at the lawyer's office. About your life being pathetic, about you being jealous. I was wrong." I pulled off my gardening gloves and sat down on the back step. "I have things to apologize for too." "No, you don't." Elena's voice was firm. "You told the truth about me. It hurt, and it destroyed the life I was pretending to live, but it was the truth. I needed to hear it, even if I wasn't ready to accept it then. I could have found another way. Dad asked me to be merciful, and I chose revenge instead." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked over and sat beside me on the step, maintaining careful distance but close enough that I could smell the clean scent of her shampoo, something simple and drugstore bought, nothing like the expensive perfumes she used to wear. "Maybe," she said. "But maybe I needed the world to collapse before I could start building something real. Maybe mercy would have just enabled me to keep lying to myself. I'll never know, will I? Because I didn't give us that chance." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a folded check. I can't pay back everything I took from Dad. Not yet. But this is a start. $500. I know it's not much, but it's everything I could save from my first 3 months of work. I looked at the check, made out in Elena's careful handwriting. I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's Dad's. Or it was. I'm trying to make things right, Sarah. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to repair the damage. I took the check, not because I needed the money, but because I could see that Elena needed to give it. Thank you. I have something else. Elena reached into her purse again and pulled out a small framed photograph, one of the pictures from Dad's collection, showing the 3 of us at a church picnic when Elena was maybe 10 years old. Dad had his arms around both of us, and we were laughing at something outside the camera's view. I took this from his house before the funeral, Elena said. I know I shouldn't have, but I wanted something to remember him by. Something from before I ruined everything. I looked at the photograph, at our younger selves. Elena had been such a bright kid, full of dreams and energy and potential. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had curdled into desperation and greed, but looking at this picture, I could see the person she'd been before the world taught her that success was more important than integrity. Keep it, I said. But maybe we could get copies made. For both of us. Elena nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'd like that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun move across my small garden. It wasn't forgiveness, that would take time, for both of us. But it was a beginning. A chance to remember that we were sisters before we were enemies, that family was about more than shared genetics or childhood memories. I should go, Elena said eventually. I have a long drive back to Denver. You could stay for dinner, I offered. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti and salad. Elena smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. I'd like that. As I watched her carry her overnight bag into my apartment, I thought about Dad's letter, about his faith that people could change, that mercy was stronger than justice. Maybe he'd been right. Maybe the point wasn't to make Elena pay for what she'd done, but to give her the chance to become someone better than the person she'd been. I'd learned something about revenge in the months since Dad's death. It's a seductive thing, the power to hurt someone who's hurt you. It feels like justice, like balance being restored to the universe. But revenge has a cost that's not immediately apparent. It requires you to become the kind of person who can systematically destroy another human being. It asks you to nurture your anger, to feed your resentment, to let the worst parts of yourself grow strong and ruthless. I'd won my war against Elena, but in winning, I'd lost something essential about who I was. I'd become someone my father wouldn't have recognized, someone I didn't want to be. The real lesson wasn't about betrayal or family loyalty or even justice. It was about the choice we all have when someone hurts us. We can choose to become someone who hurts others back, or we can choose to become someone who breaks the cycle. We can choose revenge, or we can choose to be better than the people who've wronged us. I'd chosen revenge, and I would have to live with that choice forever. But sitting in my kitchen that evening, watching Elena help me make dinner with the same careful attention she'd shown as a child learning to cook, I realized that maybe the story wasn't over yet. Maybe there was still time for both of us to choose differently. Maybe the real victory wasn't in destroying Elena's life, but in finding a way to rebuild our own. The weight of secrets, I'd learned, can crush you if you carry it alone.